Okay, great. I've started recording now, but I have to run off. But just so you know, the meeting's recording.
Thank you. Just while we're waiting, would I be able to get
Oh, sorry, what was that? I didn't catch the last bit of what you said.
would I be able to confirm your pronouns, please?
Oh, hey, I'm Grace, she, her.
Hi, I'm Natalie, I'm she, her.
Hi, I'm Theo, I'm he, him. Sorry about that.
Hi, I'm she, her.
Sorry. Hi everyone, I'm Asma.
Theo, could I double check how to pronounce your surname, please?
No, that's okay. It's Greek. Don't worry. It's Sergio.
Sergio, thank you very much.
Nah, no worries.
Okay, we're just waiting on Aditi now. Technically, I'm meant to wait until 10 past. But hopefully she.
Oh, my connection's a bit poor. I'm gonna try to just log off and like log in like a second. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's no worries. Thank you.
Just 1 second.
I'm gonna go fetch some water as well before it starts, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
How are you all doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm very tired. But apart from that, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. It's such a busy day.
Yeah, similarly, just my eyes are closing in my class earlier. I was I was not feeling it, but happy to be here. And nice to meet you all.
Yeah, it's
We
nice to
had
meet you
a
too.
couple of other meetings to attend at our departments. So it's been nearly, I think, all day since morning. I'm attending meetings.
It's weird because the Oxford kind of like lifestyle can depend on the day. So one day you're sleeping at like 3 a.m. The next day you're going to bed to have to wake up at like 6.
Right.
I feel that one. I feel that one very much.
Which department are you guys? I'm from education department.
That's lovely. That's such a nice place.
Which department are you? Wow. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I'll go first, I guess. I'm PP. I'm an undergraduate. I don't rate my department. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's 3 different departments trying to interact with each other, which makes it their biggest shambles of all time.
Mhm.
But yeah, anyone else?
No, I'm from health sciences.
Great.
I'm from history. I'm also an undergraduate.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm an undergraduate as well. I do history and English. Similar thing with like 2 departments who are trying to put things together and give us different schedules.
I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I had to do one of those letters where you had to get permission to go rusticate for a year. And unlike normally where you just go to your senior tutor and you just get them to sign off, he wanted every tutor and their department to sign off on it. And now the problem of this would be fine if you did like a 1 subject thing. It was only be 2 people, but mine now includes 7 people.
Oh my God. That's the really tedious part, I think.
100%.
Have you
One of the
dropped anything yet? Oh, sorry.
no, sorry. That's important. I just
I
want
was
to
just
say
asking.
that like sometimes it's I understand that's the concern of our senior tutors and our supervisors that would it affect our studies or no. But the point is, when there is student union, it is for you students, and that means we are supposed to keep a balance between that, and of course we can do it. So why there's a need for all that? I don't understand this.
Yeah, they don't trust me. They think I'm gonna go away and never come back.
Yeah.
So what are you saying, Natalie?
Oh, I was just gonna ask if you've like dropped, because you dropped one, right? You dropped one of the three. I was just asking if
Yeah.
you dropped one.
So believe I'd actually dropped philosophy, and I still had to get permission from a department which doesn't teach me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Anupama, are you graduate student?
Graduate.
Wonderful.
What about you, Asma?
I'm also a graduate student. I'm doing my master's in education. It's
Okay.
very, very like a very intensive program. Actually, it should be 2 years. Do you guys also feel that?
Sorry, do you feel what? I
Do you
couldn't hear
also
that.
feel that? We feel like the program should be on 2 years because it's very intensive.
Yeah. Yeah, if wishes were horses, yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if the same option applies to graduates, but like in undergraduates, there's this option which is really under advertised to like part-time study. So you can
I've heard
extend
of
your
that.
school. Yeah, but the problem is it's double or nothing. It's not too bad when you're doing like a 2 year course, but if you're doing a 3 year course, like you can either do it in 3 or 6 years. There's no in between.
Now, are you all from the UK or you all British or?
I'm born in Cyprus, but that's a cheat because I came over when I was very young.
Literally same. I was born in Nigeria, but yeah, came over when I was very young.
I'm from Middle East.
You are?
From
Where?
Middle East. From
Where?
Kuwait.
Oh, I grew up in Oman. Yeah.
Oh, you grew up in Oman. Yeah, it's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
I came from Kuwait. It's a
Okay.
country, but it's really nice. So when I moved here, I found the weather was like a big challenge for me because the
Oh,
weather
yeah.
is very hot.
Yeah, I grew up in Oman, but I migrated to America when I was in 10th grade. So, yeah.
Sorry to cut in and sorry for the wait. But it is 10 past, so I think we're going to try and get started. Yeah, I'm not sure where DT is, so I think we're just going to get started. Just to run you through like the rubric of everything. There's 3 rounds of questions. And I'll be asking in a certain order, so don't worry, I will like direct the question straight at you, so you'll know when you're asking a question. The time limit for the first question is 2 minutes, and for the second and third question is 1 minute. Please do try to stick to this. This is just in the interest of fairness. And if you do go on a little bit too long, I will have to mute you. It's nothing personal, I promise. This is just so that everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. What else? If when you're not speaking, if you could have yourself on mute, that would be great, just to avoid an echo. And yeah, I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions before we get started?
Nikita, I do have a question. I was wondering, like, who are the voters? Like, when the voting starts. My understanding is that the undergraduates and graduate students will be voting. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, would they get a link or like how?
Yeah, so this is going to go up on YouTube afterwards, as will all the other hustings,
I
so that
see.
people have a chance to view them before voting opens. Does anyone have any other questions? No? Okay, so let's get started. Hello and welcome to Hustings for the Oxford SU position for Vice President, Welfare and Equal Opportunities. My name's Nikita Jain. I'm from the Oxford Blue and I'm going to be moderating the hustings today. We have 6 candidates for the position: Theo Sergiu, Anupama Katari, Natalie Thomas, Aditi Premkumar, who unfortunately can't be with us this evening, Grace Olusola, and Asma Iqbal. So yeah, let's get started without further ado. So the first question is directed at all of you, and it is, why are you the best candidate for Vice President, Welfare and Equal Opportunities? Tell us more about what you can bring to the Student Union and what your main policies and objectives are. So to answer this question first, I'd like to invite Theo.
Hi, nice to meet you all. My name's Theo Sergio. I'm a second year PPist at Keble College, the best college. And I'd like to introduce what I think I am. I'll tell you why I'm running for the role, and then I'll go on to tell you why I think, hopefully, I think I should get your vote today. I'm running for this role because being here for a year and a half in Oxford, I've had ups and downs. It is a milestone so much more inspiring than the environment I grew up in. When I was younger, I come from a beautiful place called Tottenham, which I'll always be proud of being a part of. However, I always found that in my community where I was always supporting people from a lot of extremes and trying to inspire a lot of other people just to give things a go. Here's a very different environment. You have an environment people come a lot of time very inspired and a lot of time have that draining for them throughout their course here and throughout their studies. I can definitely say this is something that's happened to me from my time, not just coming from my background, which I'm super proud of, but also having a disability, which I'm super super proud of, sorry, and having those barriers come into my life. Throughout, I've not just made it my mission to take up my goal in protecting my rights, educational rights, but also supporting others from loads of different backgrounds, starting a charity 6 months ago called Fighting For You, and having over 56 cases of student support since then. In my manifesto, you'll see what I'm pledging, and this is the next step towards my campaigning to make this place so much more accountable, equal, and supportive. I promise external accountability because there are so many issues that go untouched in this university. If you have complaints, as we've seen, whether this is about members of staff or other members of students, they go unheard because we are not very consistent, clear, and supportive in our policies. I'll make this straight, and I believe my experience as a campaigner, a true solid campaigner, from Downing Street all the way to the streets of, outside Parliament, I hope I've got enough experience in order to show you that I will make them listen to our demands. Second of all, there's so many different groups here, which are, I believe, are underrepresented. As I've mentioned, want to impact me, there's more than that. People from the BAME community and also the LGBT plus community are people who I will definitely spend time sitting down and listening to. I think throughout my roles, especially when I was campaigning in the London Youth Parliament on issues which sometimes I had to understand and relate to, I made it my mission to sit down and help them lead the campaign. My role in being an SUVP is inspiring others to inspire others and making that change. I'm just going to put the rights and the platforms in there, kicking up and galvanizing a stream towards the university to make them compromise to a system which is fairer, more supportive towards us. I hope that's given you enough reasons to vote for me, and please feel that my DMs are always open to answer any questions for you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Theo. And now Anupama.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah, all right. Yeah, I try to prepare a speech that would sort of camouflage and maybe just speak about the good parts. But the truth is, I'm running for the role primarily because I've been a survivor of academic abuse. At my alma mater, the University of Maryland, I had abuse at the hands of my advisor, and it was intense. It took me time to come back from my second innings at Oxford. It was made more difficult because I suffer from a chronic pain disability called fibromyalgia, which has me prostrate for weeks at an end. But I think this is part of how I'm going to do it with pride by running for this role and offering my experience. I think I'm a fighter. I fought back the academic abuse by running for student body president of my university in America, and I was elected as president for 2 years. I did what I could do by fighting for collective bargaining rights. I won maternity leave for graduate students. And I also won rights to student housing because just like any huge university, the student voice tended to be lost and there was no accountability again. And I really wanted that to come to the forefront. I think that my track record makes me a really good candidate because I have delivered, and I've delivered in a very stressful environment where, you had to battle university donors, a whole bunch of lobbies because it was Washington, D.C. So to lobby for collective bargaining, you had to go and fight it out in Annapolis, and I did that. I think my track record definitely proves that. At Oxford, I thought I was going to come into a very different environment, but I guess even though the continents are different, the environment is the same, where there's still archaic systems being followed. There's still stuff getting buried under the rubble of bureaucracy. And it just bothers me again on so many fronts. And I thought this was a perfect phase to sort of showcase my abilities. I think I'm going to be focusing on, so I came from a memorial for one of my fellow students yesterday. He was a big advocate of mental health, and he committed suicide a few months ago. And I think mental health is going to be a running theme, especially in the light of COVID and everything that's happening. I am going to really focus on fair policies and transparency, especially with respect to academics, with respect to grading, with respect to how the policies are made, and whether we have a voice in the whole thing, and definitely inclusivity, because I am a graduate student running, and there's definitely more opportunities. I guess more of an incentive to run when you're an undergrad, but I definitely want to make everyone's voice heard. So those are going to be my themes, and I think that's why I'll be a good candidate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Natalie, if you'd like to put your case forward.
Hello, everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm a third year history student from Jesus College. And basically, I believe that I'm the best candidate for this position because I'm organised, I'm committed, and above all, I'm a very caring person. I really care about advancing welfare and equal opportunities. And many of my own personal experiences from being a first generation university student from a really small town in Wales has definitely driven my passion for these issues since the very moment I came to Oxford, hence why I've been involved with so many welfare and access projects. And if I join the SU, I'll ensure that I'll listen and I'll adapt to what the student needs are, not just my own. Now, just to quickly run through my main policies that were outlined on my manifesto, I want to make implicit bias training mandatory for all staff members. I want to increase support for kind of forgotten students, so those being rusticated students and students on the year abroad, because I think that, especially with COVID and everything, I think that these groups really do need extra additional support. I want to continue the essay writing workshops and kind of expand them into more study skills, because I know when I joined Oxford, I still to this day don't really feel like I can handle a lot of the academic rigor. And I'll also survey this to see if this is something that postgraduates would be interested in, and if they'd want the same service. And finally, I really want to review the welfare provisions. So I want to gather student opinions on what they want to change, and so that spending will reflect the student priorities. And also, if I'm in the role, I want to rethink ways that we can deliver welfare support during those crucial waiting periods when waiting for counselling services. And I think my main objective overall is that no student should feel left behind. I really want to take an intersectional approach in absolutely everything I do, and so that everyone feels like they're included in not even just the SU, but the whole university community. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Natalie. And now moving on to Grace.
Hello, my name is Grace. I'm a third year history and English student at CATS. And I think for me, my journey's been quite interesting because I've been involved in sort of several welfare roles in societies and in my college. I was in the welfare exec for my college during the COVID years, and we saw a lot. And I've sort of had a lot of conversations with people in a sort of peer support context. And I think all of that experience has led me to think what I hope is having a good grasp of the overall kind of issues that students are facing, and how students are feeling. And I think what that's done is grown into sort of a commitment to learning about how to tackle these issues on a sort of structural level rather than sort of interpersonal level that I'm used to in these roles and the experience that I have. I also think I have quite a personal investment in sort of welfare at a structural level. I think, like many people here, I've encountered loads of kind of different barriers, struggling with kind of chronic fatigue and kind of like structural racism. And sort of like from my economic background as well, being like a first generation immigrant from a low socioeconomic background. So I think we can all sort of observe these things and we all sort of can see these gaps. And it would be an honor for me to be elected and try and see where I can try and help. I think I'd be really committed and I care a lot. And for me, my main objectives on policies are kind of twofold. So for me, it's carrying on the work the SU does and sort of maintaining the vision of the SU welfare policy and equal opportunities policy. So that is, of course, supporting people from the LGBTQ plus community, supporting people who are care leavers. I'm a young carer myself, so I think I have quite a bit of insight into all these sort of gaps and kind of tackling the bureaucracy in that way. But I think a lot of what I saw on my manifesto was looking at some of the inequities that I've seen have been illuminated to me as a result of COVID specifically, and things that I think that can be achieved within a year. So these are kind of things that just those little gaps. So looking at how to support work with the counselling service to support people with chronic illnesses, because it's really hard to juggle a degree and a chronic illness at the same time. So kind of that looking at support there. Providing welfare training for student societies, because I think they're a really untapped resource in kind of keeping us kind of as an SU informed, sort of if elected, but also providing them with a bit more structural support. I think also kind of having an undiagnosed health condition policy, because I think a lot of people discover things about themselves and discover medical conditions at uni, but in that sort of interim where you're suffering with symptoms, your work might lapse. And right now people are at the mercy of their tutors, whether their tutor is understanding enough. And I don't think that's right. So I think, having a policy to hold tutors accountable, but also looking at the inequality within the postgraduate application process. Because right now a lot of people are talking about like panic masters and kind of how COVID has left them feeling a bit deprived. So kind of looking at how we can tackle that. And also, so kind of working to tackle all of those things, I think are really important. And just to surmise, I'd really fight for everything, and I'd try and respond to things in real time, which I think is really important. Kind of having that flexibility, but also things that I think are achievable in a year. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Grace. And finally, Asma, if you'd like to answer the first question.
Hi. First of all, thank you for having me here on this platform. I really feel honored. It says in my manifesto also, and my slogan is that everyone matters. Let's shine and grow together. So the two major things that I want to highlight is the togetherness. Nobody should be feeling lonely. Nobody should be feeling left out. We are all going through a lot of struggles in our lives, and we don't know what everyone is going through. So at university, when we are living in such a community, feeling part of such a supportive community is very important thing. And the second thing that I believe is that, and I also want to work on this, and I really want to bring it into practicality, is that pain has no religion, and pain has no race. So when it comes to human suffering, we all suffer this in the same way. So therefore, it's very important to be fair with everyone. And in my manifesto also I have mentioned that one very important thing that I want to include is that I want to bring this agenda and want to bring it into action as well, that university needs to devise a program where the most deserving students must be identified. There are students who, first of all, the ones who don't even get a scholarship, who are self-funded students. Most of the students who come in studies, they are the ones who belong to the middle class families, and they are paying everything from their own pocket, or their parents are providing for that. So it's already a big burden on them. But if they are not getting any scholarship, they don't secure any funding, nothing. So who is there to support them financially? So when we say welfare, how welfare is possible without some financial support? And I believe that university really needs to devise a system where we really identify the persons who are the most deserving. University needs to devise a system where we could reach the ones who are really in need of the support. And by support, I don't only mean financial. It means like moral support, any sort of support. A person might be coming through some mental health issues. Um, so it's been seen from my past experience. Also, I've seen that in a lot of places, as my other friends also mentioned, bureaucracy is always dominating, and therefore it doesn't. The fundings do not go into the right hands where it should be. Um, uh, because the ones who are really in need of it, they would hardly ask for it. It's about their self-respect, about their dignity, about their honor. It's not easy to ask. There are people who are, especially from middle-class families, it's very difficult for them to stand up for their own self, first of all. So, and the second thing that I want to highlight in this is mental health. When we say mental health, there are lots of programs coming on in university, lots of things coming on, but in reality, I have literally seen the student fellows sitting right next to me when we are sitting in a mental health seminar, but sitting right next to me who is really struggling hard, who has just got a message from her home that someone in the family died, and she doesn't even want to. She doesn't have the confidence to talk in front of everybody that this is something happened to me right now, and we could support her. There are people, especially there are single women who have been gone through breakup or a divorce, and they come to the university for empowerment, and we don't know what they're going through at that point. So why not we hold them and we build them up together. And one more thing that I want to include in which is part of my policy, is that who is going to help students who have children as well, who have the parenting responsibility. I was treated in a very negative way, and sometimes I really had to hear from my supervisors having concerns about me, that because I am a mother, I have small children to take care of, how am I going to make justice with my education? So when the thing is, when I signed up for that specific thing, and I am here, I passed the entrance exam and I passed the interview and I present all of my achievement there, which qualifies me for the program, and I'm there, I'm investing my time. So how do you still do not believe in my capabilities, and instead of supporting me?
Apologies to cut in. If you could wrap up your remarks, please. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. So instead of discouraging the students, instead of discouraging the mothers who also should come into education, come back to the universities or the graduate schools, we should encourage them instead of discouraging them. And the last thing is, I have also suffered a lot of points when I came to Oxford. I found that there was no support for me to settle down. So as a new international student, so this is also part of my agenda, and I believe this is a very wonderful platform for me, where I can be the voice of many others like me, and I would be helpful to them and make some practical things for them, where they really feel that they are cared and their voices are heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Asma, and thanks everyone for putting your case forward and telling us why you think you'd be the best candidate for this position. So now we'll be moving on to the second round of questions. These will be asked in the reverse order to the first round of questions. And just a little reminder, if we could keep responses pretty brief, please, maximum of about 1 minute. So let's get started with the second round of questions. So the first question goes to Asma again. What do you think is the biggest barrier to accessible education at Oxford?
I believe the biggest barrier to access education, first of all, is the finances. When it comes to the funding programs or scholarship programs, they are very little. Like, for example, there is like Rhodes Scholarship. There are very little vacancies when the applicants are in thousands. So, like the fee, the university fee is really, really high, which is, I think, comes about the affordability, the concern about the affordability, especially for international students. So I think it narrows down their opportunities for studying at Oxford, when this is such a one of the leading universities in the world. And I know lots of my friends who really wanted to make to Oxford, and I know they were quite capable and they were brilliant, but they couldn't really make it to Oxford because they couldn't secure the funding because of some reason, because the criteria sometimes explains that either you should be you should be a head or in a leading position in an organization. So if the person were not there, that doesn't mean the person is not quite capable or they don't deserve a higher education. So I think the affordability is a major concern when it comes to getting access to Oxford.
Thanks. And the next question goes to Grace. You've talked quite a lot about things you can achieve in 1 year. How would you respond to students who feel that the SU does nothing for them and the money would be better spent elsewhere?
Oh, I've had this one. I've had this one before quite a few times. Yeah, I think that's a great question to ask, because I think if you're not in touch with what the SU does, it kind of just seems like a sort of a placeholder, things that people can just kind of go through. I think for me, yeah, I guess my answer to that question would be that the SU is very well placed to voice the concerns of students. And a lot of the change that we might see is very incremental. And unfortunately, that's kind of how it goes. But change is happening. And I think the SU is also very well placed to put pressure and hold people accountable. I think the pandemic's probably a good example. I can't quite remember which college it was, but there was a college that wasn't letting students return. And I think the SU did a really good job at lobbying for that college to sort of let the students return, especially in a time where sort of kind of mental health concerns were kind of an all-time high. We weren't really accessing, students couldn't really access that well-being support. So yeah, I think for me, it's about measuring the change incrementally and being as patient as we can. But of course, what should be underneath that patience is still that sort of that fire, that need to still hold people accountable and understand that it's not necessarily enough, and just keep on going. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. The next question is to Natalie. You've talked about wanting to put in more support for rusticated students. How will you go about tackling the problem that rustication policies differ quite a lot from college to college?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest concerns is, like, of course, rusticated students don't have like a universal story to like why they're rusticating. So that's an issue, and there should be kind of like a case by case basis. But again, yeah, I think there needs to be a change in like overall policy, especially with, I think, a reviewing of the rustication policy to even determine the current process, because I think it's too restrictive. I think there's a multitude of reasons why students rusticate. Sometimes it's not like a medicalized issue. Sometimes it's genuinely people need that break. They need time to step away before mental health issues, deteriorate or whatever. So whereas I do want to carry on this kind of like individual basis, I do want to review the policy to create more of a uniform, but also take into account that this process could be a bit too restrictive. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Natalie. The next question goes to Anupama, and it's one about accessibility. So the SU has been pushing for a policy of lecture capture for quite a few years now, but as of yet, nothing has really come of it. How would you do things differently to maybe persuade the university to go ahead and put in a policy of universal lecture capture?
Say that again. I couldn't get that word. What was the word you said?
So I was talking about lecture capture, so like recording lectures and uploading them.
And I'm guessing, I mean, I don't know the details of the issue between the SU and the university, but I'm guessing privacy must have been an underlying concern, or maybe replaying. But I am all for, how would I get accessibility to lectures? I would show them best practices. I would really campaign again for capturing lectures, but then I would show them best practices around the world. I think one of the reasons that Oxford's probably not where it should be is because maybe a feeling of complacency that their policies are the best, and maybe a refusal to look at best practices elsewhere and the effect it has on the student body and on the student population, and especially on learning, because there are different types of learners. There are people who learn visually, there are people who learn after the lecture, there are people who learn before. And the idea of an educational institution is to make sure that you cater to all sorts of learners. So that's where I would try a different approach, but I would start off by showing them best practices and evidence to the effect. Yeah.
Thanks. And to wrap up this second round of questions, I'd like to ask one to Theo. So in your manifesto, you talk about abolishing the finding system as a form of discipline. Why do you think this is an important thing to do, and what would you perhaps replace it with?
So anyone who knows me knows that I have hundreds of pounds on my findings, not because I have done anything wrong, because I tell people who are fined to put their fines onto me. And I have had all sorts from the dean here. I've told him, I've been told, why don't you donate the money to charity? That's a good alternative. And I said, no, it's not. I'm happy to donate my money to charity if you report me. I want you to report me. I want to make this an issue. And because that misses out on the main point this is. We want a punishment system that has a mission statement, and this should be for every punishment. Is there deterrent, retribution, or is it reformation? What are we looking at? They won't know, because by fining people, it's no deterrent for the rich. It's not really retribution for them either, and definitely not is it any sort of reform. There's no sort of mediation, education. For an educational institution, that's quite interesting. The alternatives that I've proposed to our college, and it's all very college specific, but there could be inspiration, you can get this from outside, is ideas of access to certain things in college. For example, in the most extremes then you have something like access to education. On the other hand, you have access to certain halls and formals. But on the other levels, you have things like community service. You have mediation, apology letters, and more classes on stuff like equality and looking into the specific issue and trying to deal with the specific issue. I'm not saying we should be treated like people in school, but at the end of the day, finding people at such an unreasonable level, and let's be real, these colleges have power to decide their laws. When you sign that contract, then this is one thing I also campaign on as well, our rights. We sign a contract and in the blueprint, it says that they can change and decide rules whenever they want. We are signing away our flexibility to a fair justice system here. And that, as you can see, is something I'm going to get down and have an enshrined constitution that we're going to have a massive say in, rather than them just being dictators in this.
Thanks, Theo, and thanks everyone for answering the second round of questions. So we'll now be moving on to the third and final round of questions. And for this question, it will once again be directed at everyone. It is, should Oxford have a reading week in the middle of term? And if so, how would you persuade the university to implement one? So I'd like to invite Theo back to answer first.
Yay! Genuinely, and this is my stance on things, I think that Oxford has an intensity to it and it needs to be understood through the individual. I think genuinely tutors shouldn't be setting 8 weeks worth of work per student, per their module. Multiple times you're getting 2 modules per term. So you should at least be looking at, I know for humanities at Keeble there's a maximum thing at 12. And this should kind of be standardized. We should be working about flexibility. I think a very static reading week that you have in the middle of the term might not be the best, because everyone has their own issues and you want that to be flexible. What you should be doing is sculpting the workload with a tutor, so limiting how much they can impose on a student, and have that student have that relationship with the tutor to give them the flexibility which is best for them. But I think what the issue about reading week is trying to get at, and I truly understand when I've listened to these concerns myself in my research and running for this role, is that at the moment you have a lot of intensity and lack of time to actually enjoy your student life. So when do we actually come into Oxford? I said this, I had more fun and made friends really quickly on interview week because I had more time to enjoy myself then than I did actually in Freshers week, because I was rushing to write an essay during then as well. So making sure that we actually understand that we get that balance. But a static reading week, I personally think, and from what I've heard, is not the way to go with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Theo. And now the same question to Anupama. Should there be a reading week?
Yeah, there should be. I think for that you have to go back to Oxford and White's founded. So if you go back to all the old books and everything, it's with like lords and ladies. I mean, lords primarily. So I'm going to be blunt here for white men, and it doesn't really include all the different kinds of students that we have as of today. It doesn't have transgendered students in it. It doesn't have parents, student parents, and a whole bunch of people. So when you have a student week, it's about letting people know that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to go and, maybe attend to your children. It's okay to go and do all the paperwork that's pending to get your LGBT rights or whatever you need to do to get your disability rights. It's okay to take some time off. It's okay to make people feel more comfortable that, there is time to slow down. There is time to focus on stuff, and there's time to get ahead. So, I mean, I think they should have a reading week, and I would campaign for it because I think it's time to sort of throw out a lot of archaic traditions, and I think go forward into the future.
Thank you. And now turning to you, Natalie, what are your opinions on this?
It's difficult. I have thought about this before, but I think the nature of a reading week anyway is kind of problematic, because I think it insinuates you're still going to be working, right? It insinuates that you're still going to be doing reading in this week, whereas what we really need is kind of that respite. Especially, and also, like Theo said, the kind of flexibility to sit down with your tutor and like decide for you when you want to take this kind of like respite or whatever. I know other universities have done kind of like free up our Wednesdays, which I guess is just a day where you have that respite midweek. I'm not sure if that would go down well here, but I think when we're talking about implementing reading weeks, it's listening to what the students want and allowing them to have that option. So I probably would campaign for maybe not a reading week, but maybe a few days where students can request to have that time off, especially for STEM students, because I feel like with humanities, I've heard people have just like kind of asked for a reading week, and they've got it from their tutors. But I would definitely campaign, and I'd make the case for respite, mental health, and yeah, I would listen to what the students want on that.
Thanks, Natalie. And now the same question to Grace.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a very tricky one, because I remember talking to a friend and them telling me that it wasn't necessarily the amount of work, it was that having that tab open at the back of your brain where kind of there's always going to be another thing. As soon as you send off an essay, there's always another one to be done. And I think, I think that's what makes it difficult. I'm not sure if a reading week, kind of like, Natalie and Theo were saying, would kind of solve the inherent issue there to do the workload, mainly because we have longer vacs and we can all probably attest to the idea that in those vacs, it's, the rest that we should be taking, we're not necessarily taking. We might be praying for collections. As long as we have these demands of us and the, high workload that we have, it's going to be hard for people to utilize a reading week, I think, in the way that probably it's been designed for. I do think kind of it is kind of symbolically quite nice, but I think, there is sort of a STEM and humanities divide as well, where and for me, I know on the history side, sometimes I have no contact hours in a week, and that is basically a reading week, and there's still that sort of thing on the back burner. I think for me, it's about kind of listening to individual student needs. I think it would be a combination of campaigning for like researching and kind of like surveying, seeing what students want and kind of how it would apply to them and their degrees, and getting an overarching opinion from that, but also kind of looking at what other universities do, because other universities aren't structured in the same way that Oxford is. And it's likely that tutors would sort of have different schedules and things like that to do. So I think from all sorts of different standpoints, it will be hard kind of bureaucratically, but I think it's definitely worth looking at what the standards should be and kind of researching that, and definitely kind of trying to respond to kind of the bulk opinion in that way.
Thanks, Grace. And finally, I'd like to bring Usman. What are your opinions on a reading week?
Thank you, Nikita. Well, I believe that reading week, there should be some proper planning about it. It should be incorporated into very useful things. First of all, I would like to integrate reading week or this campaign into socialization. Students should have this is one of the very important incentive and one of the biggest attraction that students choose Oxford University for networking. So it should give students a chance to network with other students, to get to know people of similar interest or even different interests from other departments. And like I have seen, there is no collaboration. I'm a graduate student and I hardly know any undergraduate. So from graduates to undergraduates, it should be like a bridging activity. So when I say it should be pre-planned properly, that means on the academic calendar, it should be planned before the academic year starts. So as a student, we should know when is this coming up exactly throughout the year. So I should plan ahead of time as a student. If I'm coming to the university or even if I'm an undergraduate student, I should know what I am going to do for the reading week. And the theme of the reading week, this should be defined ahead of time. And like one is socialization should be a theme. The second thing is mental health, which is very important part. And the third thing I would say that when there is a reading week, then all the studies, undergraduate or graduate departments, all the lectures, all the studies and assignments and deadlines, everything should be halted. That it should be only a reading week. And there should be a buddy system must be supported where the undergraduates and graduates can communicate with each other, or we can there should be the major thing is we should be able to connect with everyone. If I'm part of Oxford, I should know my faculty members. I should know people in my university. That this should be really a lifelong long experience for me. But otherwise, as my other friends also mentioned, if it's only coming to be like as an extra burden on the students, then it is only impacting their mental health. It's impacting them in a lot of other ways. So it should be properly planned and it should be integrated with very useful themes. And when we say like it's socialization, and as my other friends also mentioned, when we are socializing, we can also find ways how to solve our personal problems during that time while reading, discovering other artists, other authors, and getting myself familiarized with other pieces of literature, which is also a very important part of being at Oxford. So it should benefit us in the whole way, in a proper way. That's all I would have to say for this.
Thanks, Asma, and thanks everyone for your views on what's clearly a very complex and nuanced issue. So I'm afraid that's all we have time for on today's Hustings. I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming today and putting forward their cases so well, and wish you all the best of luck in next week's elections. Voting opens on Monday, so do go onto the Oxford FC website and vote for who you feel has best convinced you for this role. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
The recording stopped. How's everyone doing? Oh, it's still going. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Alice, I don't know if you're there, but if you could stop and save the recording, please.